Hello there and welcome to Excitement Overload here at HQ. Why? Because, do you remember the Kopis one? Just about my very favourite bind and fly model. Just so good out the box. People complained about power of the motors. I didn't notice it. The only thing I swapped out was this antenna, and I was racing with this the other weekend. I'm not saying it was any good, but I was racing with it and it did great. It smashed into loads of things and kept going. But that's old news, because now there is a new one, and somewhat unimaginatively it is now called the Kopis 2, and I am super excited to get it. So let's get it open and see what we have in it. And just like last time, HolyBro have put it in this rather nice carry case. I am an absolute sucker for these, they just make things so easy. And inside, held in with a lovely battery strap, is the Kopis 2. So here's what we're looking at. And a couple of changes from last time. The motors are more powerful, now the F40 Pro 2, and they feel like, you know, you get that thing where you just turn it and you can just feel it clicking between each magnet. It's kind of like that. They've still gone with a curious little angle of there, but we seem to have a decent FOXeer skew. And they've got rid of the GoPro mount altogether, so I don't know if this is supposed to be a pure racing machine or what. They've got this thing, I mean, people have mentioned, I think, that, oh, this seems a bit vulnerable, but it's really quite hard to hit that unless you're doing something weird. Now it comes with a Runcam micro swift with a 2.3mm lens, and the rest of the spec on this is pretty exciting. But let me, let's have a quick look in the box, see what's in the zip section. Okay, so we got two pairs of Dow Cyclone 5046s. Really like the Cyclone. Never used the 5046 before, I always had the 5045, so more increased for us, I guess, on these guys. Then we've got a bunch of bits. We've got obviously the lock nuts for the props, we've got some bits of heat shrink and cable ties, just in case you want to redo this bit. I kind of like this forward angle. It keeps things very much out of the way. I thought it would give a really bad signal at first, but it's pretty reasonable. I don't think it's as good as having them coming out the top, but it's been working pretty well on the other one. And there's little cables and, you know, the OSD thing for the camera, all that gubbins. Okay, so let's talk about the spec of the inside, because the last one was really quite highly spec'd. It ran, you know, some of the best components that were there at the time. It's one of the only bind and flies with like BL Heli 32 ESCs. This one doesn't pull any punches either. The previous Kakute board was very good. It had the sort of floating IMU, which was really damped that way. This has got the Kakute F7 board. I've never had an F7 board before, so that's quite exciting, to say the least. A VTX on top is, I think it's called an Atlatil, I don't know. Anyway, it speaks, I think it speaks the tramp frequency, and you can change it between 25, 200, 500 and 800. I think that's tramp. I think the first one was tramp. I don't think it's smart audio. But, you know, you can go in with the OSD and do it whichever way you like, so that's cool. And it's got an MMCX connector, now becoming sort of very much standard. Again, going, as I mentioned, to this little lollipop, which is actually its name, from FOXeer. That's cool. ESC wise, it's got a Teco 32 4-in-1 35 amp ESC, and it can support D-Shot 1200. And the even crazier thing about this, despite these being 2400 kV motors, it can support 4 to 6S. It says it's optimised for 4S, so I don't know if that's the tune they've done on it. But, I mean, I don't have any 6S or even 5S. I've yet to reach my speed limit on 4S, to tell you the truth. But, I mean, it might be interesting. You might get, obviously, a 6S battery wouldn't have to work so hard to produce the same amount of thrust. But, you know, I can't think you want to go like full throttle all the time. It would be mental. Oh, and I've just noticed a little beeper sticking out here, which is always good. This is the bind and fly version, so it's got the FreeSky x-lite in. I'm going to be binding up with my Taranis x-lite. So let's do that now, and let's get it on Betaflight. There shouldn't really be anything to do. I just want to set up my modes. I want to throw the r-xsr back from my radio into the on-screen display so I can see what's happening. But let's just have a look at the configuration, see how it is, and then we'll take it for a proper fly. Okay, so let's have a very quick tour of Betaflight and how it was set up and how it's set up now. You'll see it's running 341, which isn't particularly up to date, but it's not bad either, so we're just going to go with that. Ports wise, I looked at this and I said, wow, that's a lot of UARTs, which is quite handy. And we can see that the VTX uses smart audio, so not tramp as I said earlier, so ignore what I said then, it's all fine. And we've got UART for S Bus, of course, with all these spare UARTs about, or so it would seem. Also notice we've got ESC sensor input on one of the UARTs as well. I don't really know how to use that, but it's there, so that's good. Configuration wise, made a few changes here. It's running D-Shot 600, not 1200. Motor stop wasn't on, which I've added. It's still only running an 8K 2K loop, but I've left that as it is because I want to use it out of the box as much as I can. And just did one other little change here. I had air mode permanently enabled, and I like to do it on a mode switch, so I changed that. Pit tuning wise, this is their tune which I haven't touched. All I've done is up my super rates to 0.8. This has an r-xsr receiver in it. The r-xsr has telemetry, but it doesn't have its own RSSI signal. So what I do is send that telemetry signal back to the radio so I can use it as RSSI. This comes up often about people not quite sure how to do that. So there's a link you'll see up here in the video. I've got a blog page that tells you how to do that. Mode wise, I've set up my own ones. I've got the normal arm on a switch. I use angle. Got the beeper because it's got a beeper on board. There's my air mode I've set up, and I've got turbo mode set up because this has an adequate version of BL Heli, so you can just do that. It was already there, so I didn't have to do anything. And the only other thing is the OSD. The OSD was set up reasonably sensibly. This is what it looked like, and I've just changed it to my own liking. Just sort of minimalist stuff down the sides there. The extra thing I normally put on these quads with some sort of smart audio or something is I like to have my VTX channel showing. And that is it. So let's get on with the flying part. Hey, we're back at the field. What a glorious day. Brilliant for September here. We've got the almighty Kopis 2, which I'm calling almighty already just because of the spec. Haven't flown it yet, but obviously I'm expecting amazing things based on basically what the Kopis was, and this seems to improve on it, but we shall see. No HD or anything on this. I just want to test it is how it is, so I haven't really changed anything other than like the OSD and stuff, but yeah, we'll take it for the little line of sight hover, just a quick fly around, and then we'll get straight up for an FPV flight and we'll see how this does. Whoa, that's got some power. Doesn't take much trouble to get that in here. Jesus Christ. Keeps going up. Right, let's try that again. It just got away from me. A quick burst, shall we? Jesus Christ, that is that's got a lot of power. I don't think we'll have any problems with this. Only landing it. So we're off for our first FPV flight, and the first thing I actually noticed on this one is it seemed a little bit sluggish, which I thought was weird. It didn't feel quite right at all, and after a while I'm like, no, this is wrong. Something's wrong with the speed here. I'm going to come down and have a look at it, and what would you know, but the super rate was on 0.70. Now I have to admit, I did the Betaflight recording after I got back, so I'm not sure. I thought I changed it I must not have. So anyway, I changed this up to my normal 0.8, which is a world away from 0.7. Saved that and went up again. Same battery, just making sure it's okay. That's much better. That feels completely normal now. So we can actually get on with some proper flying. And first battery, but this thing just feels so easy. It's just reacting perfectly. Absolutely spot on. The motors in this one give a completely sort of different sound. They're so smooth, but they give a completely different sort of whir than my regular quads do, which I found quite interesting. I don't know why. I don't know what it is about them, but it's something just slightly different, which I kind of cool. But anyway, how is this flying? Pretty amazingly, actually. I mean, the main thing about the difference in like a good quad and a quad you have to work on is how much effort you have to put in, and this is pretty much effortless. That is the good thing about it. I'm just flying it and I'm thinking, well, this is easy. The camera is great, it's responding absolutely perfectly, and it's got absolutely oodles of power to spare. It is really sweet, and when you come in and out of a maneuver, it's perfect. It just stops absolutely where you want it to. Sometimes I talk about small quads feeling like you're flying a bigger one. This 5-inch quad kind of feels like you're flying something smaller because it seems so lightweight. It's just able to do whatever you like. So I just wanted to check smart audio out, so I zapped the power up to 200. You will notice from working on 25 milliwatts that it was a pretty clean picture, nice and good. So I wanted to see if 200 milliwatts would do the same thing, because on the previous Kopis it kind of got a bit screwy after you went beyond about 100 milliwatts. But this is looking pretty damn nice at 200 milliwatts, I must admit. So I think what's really nice about things like the Kopis, and certainly this Kopis 2, is it is a premium quad. It's not a cheap quad, and there's reasons for that. We're talking some high quality components, but it doesn't mean it's reserved for pure racers or very experienced guys. The fact it works so well out of the box actually gives the ability for beginners to be able to use it. The Micro Swift, even with the 2.3mm lens instead of 2.1, gives a wide enough angle so it is not tricky to land. This is pointing up a fair old way, and I can still come in quite happily and put it down on the spot, and you can get a fair old whack of speed on it. I actually did a speed run on my very last battery, which is probably a mistake. What I tend to do is I use a sort of average battery for the first one because I know I'm doing a bit of line of sight hover. Then I use my 2 best batteries for the next 2 flights to try and get the best out of it. And I didn't necessarily intend to fly 6 batteries through this thing in the day, but I did. So by the time I got to battery number 6, it wasn't particularly good, but my god is it fast. I mean, coming on the sort of the outward leg, I only got up to about 75% throttle, and it is hurtling along. It feels really fast, but there's no drama with it. It just holds its position perfectly. I'm able to hold the altitude perfectly. It's fantastic. Coming back, I managed to get it up to 100%, but I have to say, after about 80%, I didn't really see much of a difference in the speed. It made a lot more noise, and it was destroying the battery. Can you see the battery sag? My god, it barely survived. But when I stopped going crazy on the throttle, it did recover at least. Yeah, I don't know what to say about it really. It's just fantastic. I mean, I really, really loved the Kopis 1, and I think I like this better because this is even faster, and it is just a joy. I really do love flying quads like this. It's not only the fact that you've got no drama where it doesn't work, it's just it works so brilliantly out of the box. You're just out there
flying and just having huge amounts of joy just throwing this thing around the field. Anyway, I will stop talking because now I'm just gushing.
So what can you say about the Kopis 2 except, whoa, it's really good. It takes the Kopis 1 and it ups the ante a little bit more. So significant improvements I found over the Kopis 1 is it's got more power and more speed. Didn't think I needed any more power and speed, but it was nice to have it. It's also got a much cleaner VTX signal, both in terms of this little lollipop adapter seems a lot better than the previous thing they put on there, which is why I swapped mine over. And also when you run it, when you run the VTX at higher output power, there's no noise. It's completely consistent. That's really nice. And obviously there was just nothing to do with it. It just ran beautifully out of the box. It's not even running on like this max settings. It's not. I'm sure it could run a higher gyro loop or PID loop speed. I'm sure it could run, well, I know it can run D-Shot 1200, but it's not doing so. And it's still absolutely amazing. So I've had to work really hard to try and think about, are there any things I'm a bit nitpicky about? What could maybe be better? What am I sort of worried about? So there are a couple of little areas, and I think I've sort of highlighted them before. One of which is this connection to this cable here, which I don't like. It's just sticking out extra bit too far. Now, I don't think it's a problem in normal flying or crashing, but for example, when I put it back in its case, I'd have to wrap around this tightly and push against that cable, and I really don't want to stress that. I'm worried about that weakening over time or having a problem. The other thing which I kind of think the Kopis 1 had a better implementation is the camera. Now there's nothing wrong with the micro swift camera, they're fantastic, but I do feel in terms of comparing it with something like the Mini, which is fully enclosed that the Kopis 1 had, they can be a little bit fragile. There's a sort of an opening here where you can sort of get into the circuits. I've had one of these before where it's kind of like a sticky back, and I peeled it back and one of the capacitors came off with it, and that's a little bit of a worry that stuff could get in there and that could get hurt. Might be my imagination, but I get the feeling that the Mini Swift is a slightly better picture. Perhaps it's because it's got a bigger lens and gets better colour reproduction. Again, there's a whole bunch of people that didn't like the Mini because it stuck out further because it was a bigger camera, and this is obviously protected, so you know it swings around about, so that's just a little thing. Now I suppose the other slightly controversial bit, and I've watched Bruce's review of this, is talking about this white layer in the carbon. What is it? Well, first off, it's not simply a white layer. If you look closely, you can see that there's layers of white and then grey, and then it's like interleaved with something. And I don't know what it is. I mean, I can tell you that this thing is insanely stiff. I can't bend it. I've asked a question to HolyBro about like what is it and why did you choose it. They haven't come back yet. The other thing they didn't come back about is like I asked them about, is this a pure racing machine, because you didn't include a GoPro mount here. Is the idea it's just racing around, or are you just letting people put their own mounts on? So they haven't come back to me, but certainly if I get the answer to the white material, I will update the video. And I think we need to go out and fly it again and just put a GoPro on it anyway, because it's got power to spare and it's a really smooth ride, so I think it can do some really lovely things with an HD camera on there. So that'll be coming up soon. But in the meantime, I'm in love yet again with the Kopis. They haven't let me down. They've taken the original design, they've done some amazing things with it, they've upped the ante on the sort of the tech they're putting in there. It's all latest stuff and it's really working well together. So yeah, I'm loving this one. Lovely, lovely quad. And again, I'll put a link to HolyBro's site where you can find it. And yeah, stay tuned for more from this one, certainly for the GoPro, and hopefully I might have some answers on the other stuff. Anyway, hope that video's been helpful, and I'll catch you next one. Bye for now.
Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.